Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wandering Podcast, where we take advisement from outside the box. I'm Rihanna Ritter, your host. I'm an intuitive, sexuality, and authentic expression coach. Are you an accomplished professional who plays the part of having it all figured out? Who's strong for everyone else, but feels lonely, misunderstood, like you can't tell anybody the truth about how stressed you are, how not passionate you are about your life and all that you've created? I guide my clients to deep, lasting fulfillment. I re-engage them with their bodies, their pleasure, their desire. I help them align to enjoy fulfillment and prosperity in all areas of their lives.
Today, my guest is Michael Davis. He's the CEO and founder of Merek Security Solutions and the creator of mindfulbites.io. It's a groundbreaking K-5 curriculum enhancing digital well-being. Welcome, Michael. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Rihanna. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm a huge fan, and I'm so happy to be a part of this journey with you. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. So what you've created is so, I don't know, something we've never thought about, it seems like.
I don't want to be that guy, or that company in this case, because this is a collective wisdom over 30 years of being in technology, working in the United States Navy, working in corporate cybersecurity jobs, and just really finding myself at a loss for who I was in technology. So this Mindful Bites, or whatever you want to call this journey that we're on right now currently, is a product of me interrogating my own journey in technology and my own addictive qualities and my own sort of from the alarm clock to social media wake up call every morning that I was going through for many years before I decided to ask myself the question of, well, what if I'm struggling with this at the ripe old age of, 102, what are our 6-year-olds experiencing? What are our 8-year-olds experiencing when they're getting a phone or a device handed to them from an adult in the room who also may be going through their own journey in cyber and sort of digital addictive spaces. So this was a long road, and I'm happy I'm on it. I'm not denying any of that. But man, it is forever evolving because I'm forever asking better questions. So
Yeah, so bringing mindfulness, like we're bringing mindfulness into our daily lives because we realize we're overstressed, overworked, and we're disconnecting from our relationships. People's biggest complaint when they get to the end of their life is that they wish they hadn't been chasing money and working so hard, but spending quality time with people and, really living life. And so we think of bringing mindfulness to these other areas, but we don't necessarily, like we've talked about, oh, let's limit our screen time. But there's so much more to bringing mindfulness to our internet, computer usage, right?
No, that's correct. We ask for, and I say we as a collective, kids mostly ask for more screen time, and in their bodies and in their psychology of that ask, they don't know who's asking for more screen time. And is it you? Is it your anxiety? Is it the curiosity? Let's unpack that question about, I want 1 more hour on this device or else, which is what happens. And so it is a different way to look at technology through a psychological lens, but it also is a different kind of questioning of who we are and our uses of technology, who we are, who do we become? Sorry, in this sort of delta between the thing that started looking at YouTube and the thing that's ending 2 hours later on YouTube. And I think literacy is a beautiful space to learn how technology works, but we're so far beyond that stretch now. We need to start looking at our own internal literacy that's within our bodies and our senses, and so that's the work we're doing. I mean, the kind of psychology of how we show up online, and that texture is giving a different type of reading in terms of how in terms of our addictive predispositions towards technology. Some of us can use technology very mindfully, as you know, and get off of it, and they're fine. Others will get on and doom scrolling and all the things, and 7 hours later, we're waking up in this daylight when it was dark when I started. And so that's a conversation we have to have, and part of the work we're doing is really focusing on the delta, what's in between that space. of me and the device, and asking deeper and better questions about our relationship with technology.
Yeah, especially young kids, they don't like they think that what they're seeing on TikTok or whatever, YouTube is fact. And a lot of times creators are making something for entertainment purposes, and kids don't have any clue. Like, I can't tell you how many times my kids show me a video that was very clearly edited and not anywhere near part of reality. And
I
they really are like, this is real, this is real. And sometimes it was kind of heartbreaking to like crush their dreams because they wanted to believe it was real. But it's
it is,
also,
yeah.
yeah. But then
It's,
there's that time where you can tell they've been on it too long because they start to get really agitated and their body gets really antsy and they need to move and they need to. So there's a
yeah,
lot to deal with here. And we think that, you know, these devices are our babysitters. And you know what? We are so blessed that we can have that for here and there because we
right.
don't live in tribes anymore where we
We
have the
don't.
whole village helping us raise the child.
Right,
So
right.
we're using these devices as the substitute for that. It's not a substitute,
I
but we
know.
do need the help. So we need to, you know,
I think there's an interesting parallel around how do we mindfully do that though? How do we really curate a healthy balance of technology and a healthy balance of use of the internet and a healthy balance of these apps? And unfortunately, and I think many of us have still struggled with this, what does the idea of balance look like? Everyone's equity is different. People have different access points to technology. You can't just say everyone only gets an hour of this and 2 hours of that because there's not every household's different, every parenting is different. So we're not in this sort of collective where we're all speaking the same language. I grew up in a very poor part of South Carolina growing up. We didn't have access to sort of the things that my friends had down the street from me, who had parents who worked and all these other access points that they had in their home. And so it was a real shift for me to go to his house and see him all these toys and games and I'm just struggling to ask for a teddy bear or something like that at my home because I didn't realize there was just inequity around access points. So I think it's a hard question to justify for around um, to kind of blanket statement say we all need at this amount of time online or this amount of time. Research shows that there's a real space where we lose ourselves within the online space, particularly with doom scrolling. But we have to think more inside of us. We all have the same breath work. And I think that's kind of where we have to start, where is everyone the same? We all breathe. Maybe not to the degree of full body, but we all have some version of breath that we can lean into. So if you ask yourself, what if I just took a deep breath before I logged into anything? Before I get onto Instagram, before I get into a Twitter war, or before I get into my inbox, maybe I just take a deep breath and just say, okay, am I okay? Am I in a good right mindset? And I think that's what we're teaching kids to do is that we need to get kids more in their bodies and less shame around that and just be like, where do you feel that I know you want one more hour, I get that. I want one more hour too. But where do you feel that in your body that speaks the loudest voice in that one more hour space? What is giving you the loudest voice in that space? And let's talk about that. So yeah, that's where we are.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, to locate in that in your body, like where, like, is this loneliness? Is
Right.
this like,
Right.
what are you feeling?
And it may,
What do
it
you,
may be some,
what are some of the things that kids say when you ask that
yeah,
question?
that's a good question. So we actually role play this exact exercise within schools that I are using this curriculum, Mindful Bites.io. In this case, fourth graders, so they're 9-year olds. So I'm teaching this class in this case. And yeah, when that question comes up and we role play screen time, we have half the kids pretend to be parents and the other half pretend to be the kids and the asking for one more hour or whatever that time frame is. And truthfully, they don't think of it as a loneliness. They don't see it as a as a as an anxiety filled um, language space. It's a feeling. It's almost esoteric in many ways. It's no different than a baby who just, you see videos online nowadays where they'll take the phone from a newborn or at least a toddler, and the baby starts crying and it just doesn't, it can't express what it feels. But once the screen's back in front of the baby, it intuitively presses the buttons and all the things. So I think part of the things that come out of that lesson plan for us is um, we need to talk about the weird thing, even if it's undescribable. If you can't, it just can't really describe the feelings, just talk about it. Give it a name. Make it up. Call it Sam. Call it something, but give it a name. I think that's the step around just getting this anxiety that we'd like to just linger in. And I think those, they say those who are who wander are not always lost. In this case, this is kind of a true statement around this introduction to to technology. With these kids, we give it a name. We give it a funny name. We make it something like Bobo wants one more hour, not me. Because I'm actually okay with not having one more hour, but Bobo wants one more hour. So we make it a fun game, but in the end of the day, though, they're able to at least identify their feeling. I think that's what parents suffer the most because they're busy. They're raising these kids and they're doing all kinds of other things in their lives, and they don't have time to sit down and do the emotional connection with asking these deeper questions. But unfortunately, this has to happen, and this, however you do it, but this has to happen in that way.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the parents aren't doing that for themselves. Like they don't
Also
even
true.
realize that they need that. When I work with clients, adult clients, and I tell them to feel a part, something that's coming up that's resisting whatever we're doing, and
Right.
to just sit there with it and feel it. Don't try to escape it. And
Yeah.
now talk about it. Tell me
Yeah.
what's coming up. Like the first thing that pops into your head, they're like, they're like, I can't say
Yeah.
that. I'm making
Yeah.
things up. Like there's all
Right.
kinds of stress about it.
Yep.
And it's like, it doesn't matter if it's accurate. It doesn't need to be
Right.
accurate. Just
Right.
let it out.
Well, that's the thing. Like we had an opportunity. I don't know. I'm 48, but I remember looking at magazines when I was a kid and seeing all these beautiful muscles and all these guys that were like, and you didn't know back. I didn't know back then. There was all kinds of Photoshop and all kinds of touch ups and all these things. So you want to start going to the gym to look like this guy in a magazine, and so you don't have an awareness until you come into your own awareness of that world. And that's why I said earlier about equity and access. It's challenging when you don't have an awareness of the awareness of what's happening around you. And if you're just sort of seduced by the thing that's shiny, you never know why you're seduced, or you never inquire who is being seduced, and you never know, and you never inquire that the thing that's seducing you is a company that pays employees to seduce you every single day. So that level of interrogation never happens, and of course you're going to be you're never going to have time to do the work to bring you into an alignment with anything in life because you're being tugged and pushed and pulled everywhere without questioning the integrity or the intentionality behind that push or pull.
Yeah. I mean, my daughter's just now getting into kind of religion and the Bible, and I'm like, okay, that's
Mhm.
cool. But I
Right,
just want you to think about whether that's true for you or not. So I want you to know why you're doing that. So she said she gave something up for Lent. I said, okay, what does that mean? And she
right.
said, well, mm, I
See,
don't, I don't know how to describe it. And I'm like, well, just I've never given something up for Lent. I don't know what that means. She said, oh, well, I thought you were in questioning me, quizzing me to tell me I'm wrong. And I was like,
see exactly. No, but that's the world that she knows. Because that's what social media does to you. It tells you that you're wrong. It tells you that you're too fat, or you're not smart enough, or you're not witty enough, or you don't have this um, it tells you all things you're lacking in many ways. So I can't speak for her, but I think that's sort of a sort of a barometer of where the world shows you online that you're lacking versus what you have, or inquires deeper around what you believe. Um, and handing your kid an iPhone or handing your kid an iPad without any level of that like inquisition or interrogation, if you will, is the same exact scenario
mm,
because eventually she's going to be on a phone or on a device and not know why she's been looking at videos for 3 hours, and no one's ever asked her why that happens to her. And so it's the same texture around driving a car. I mean, no matter how smart the kid is, it could be a Doogie Howser in your house who's just like going to Stanford at 7 years old. But you still have to legally pass a test, and there needs to be some provisions in place that allows you to show maturity. And we have those things in place in our society that prepares you for that space. Now, are there exceptions to that rule? Of course. Doogie Howser was Doogie Howser for a reason. But ideally, though, you want to have some flexibility around it. Let this kid grow into that versus just being handed a thing and maybe without any kind of social emotional understanding of what's happening to their body. We teach kids about their senses. Like for example, we have five senses, of course, but we focus mostly on the spidey sense. What does that spidey sense tell you about that link or that inbox thing that shows up in an email, or what that email that shows up in the inbox, or what does that spidey sense tell you about this app? Or you're using the game and people are using bad language, or what does your spidey sense tell you about that? And I think that's what we are trying to really instill deeper and deeper, and unfortunately younger and younger because kids are becoming more attached to devices much younger than we would like to see. But it has to start within the internal compass before the external compass begins to direct traffic in whatever direction it goes.
Yeah, so much of our worth is coming from external validation, which has been going on for a long time. But
Right.
now that we have emails and texts and calls, if there's no
Right.
notification, nobody liking my stuff, no one trying to get a hold of me, who am
Right.
I? What
Right.
do I exist? Am I worthy? Uh,
Yeah.
and people don't realize how addicted they get to that. I think, when I first started my business, my sense of safety came from having
Right.
emails in my inbox from clients, even if they were kind of agitated, or
Right.
it was just like, I just need to know that somebody needs me.
Seriously, that level of anxiety, as you know, we call that calendar hacking in my world because you have to go through that. And some people, as you alluded to, get excited by seeing their full calendar. Uh, but one of the things that we learned, and I think I learned similar to you when I started my company, was, man, as you get older, you speak less. I think that was a lesson I learned. I speak less and listen more, and that took a long time for me to really get into that space because I was being seduced by all the things I wasn't hearing. I mean, all things I wasn't paying attention to the things I was hearing, but I was being seduced by the things thought I was hearing, or I was imagining, or I was having a fantasy space around that. I think that calendar example you brought up speaks to a fantasy space of being seen and being valued, and they want my opinion, even if it's negative. They still want my opinion, and that's what social media does to our kids and our brains when they start earlier, or they get um, immersed in like validation online. But I think part of the challenge is the human attention span, as we've talked about a couple of times. It is getting past that 3 second, that's whatever that is, 6 second mark to captivate someone's attention. Uh, it's scary because looking at a phone sometimes, and I do this myself, looking at a phone sometimes it's more interesting in the phone than real life.
Yeah.
You know, I don't walk into the grocery store and just laugh uncontrollably for an hour because you don't do that. But on these
Right.
videos on Instagram, I can laugh uncontrollably with all these memes and all these, I can just be in this funny space and I feel good about that. And so I think the challenge is getting past the human attention span, but also the world outside of you needs to be more interesting than what's inside this phone. And that's challenging. I mean, I'm not saying it to make it sound like it's, some Harvard review study revealed this, that, and the other. But ideally, though, we have to get the world outside of us needs to be more interesting. And I think
Mm,
that's scary for some.
yeah, we need to. Well, being really engaged in our lives is challenging because we've been so conditioned to just do the job that's going to pay the best and neglect the other parts of ourselves, the creative parts, chase the dollar, buy the things, and then
Right.
you're supposed to be fulfilled at that point. And then you do all that and you find out, not
Yeah.
quite. And
Happens
then
all
you,
the time.
yeah.
Yeah, I was talking to my friend the other day about this topic of the lottery. I think the lottery is still obviously a big, huge part of our society. But how many lottery winners who win, 200 million, 100 million, whatever that number is, more than $1, let's go with that, and they're broke. And then a year later, or they're in like complete utter chaos of their lives because they've never really understood the relationship to money. They've always consumed it, but not related to it. And that's what's
Mm,
happening in our society. We used to actually take music, for example. We used to have music, and there was like a real immersive feeling around music. You may go to a live performance, you may go to a concert, whatever, and you experience music that way. Now we consume music. We don't experience it anymore. We consume it with these with streaming services, and we're not into that space at all. And technology is no different. We're just consuming it without even tasting it. And I
mm,
think that's the challenge in this early childhood development space because we want to teach kids to actually, manners and hygiene around what they consume. We do it with everything else in life. We talk about manners and hygiene, how to behave in society, and don't talk with your mouth full, all those things. But we don't do the same thing in technology, though. We don't ask kids to like, what does look both ways before you cross the street look like online? What does, not talk with your mouth full look like on using a device?
mm.
Having healthy boundaries. What does that look like? What does stranger danger look like when we're using devices? Because that van that we talk about in the 80s with the dark windows and the puppies and the balloons that's trying to coerce you out the playground, that van still exists. That person's
Yeah.
just now online in that digital van space.
Yeah. My daughter, very young, I don't know, 5, decided she wanted to have her own YouTube channel. So we're like, okay, let's set it up. And so she was doing some gymnastics, and the
Right.
first person that commented was, "What color panties are you wearing?"
See? I mean,
And so then I had to have that conversation with my 5-year-old daughter, which I'm glad that I was there to have the
well,
conversation
that's
and she
also
didn't
true.
uh, engage with the person. So,
Correct.
like, she learned really young, but a lot of kids don't because they
Right.
don't necessarily see that happen.
Yeah.
It's just a very weird place to be. But yeah, it's no different than that real stranger in that van. It's,
Right.
it's everywhere.
And you mentioned earlier about parents. I mean, that's really hard because some parents are not modeling behavior of what it looks like to be um, kind of a steward of technology. I teach, as I mentioned earlier, fourth graders when we do our recent lesson around senses was we were talking about what does technology look like, what does technology sound like, what does it smell like, that kind of language, and what does the internet taste like, that kind of those kind of questions. And one of the kids asked or said that when her mom's on her phone, she doesn't look up. And so she knows at age 9, that's when you go and ask your mom for things that she'll normally say no to. And she'll just be in the phone and say, "Hey, can I have a chocolate bar?" And she just say, "Yes, that's fine, go have one." And so there's like a real sinister side of how do I get things that I want when the adults in the room are distracted too on their phones.
Yeah.
And so it was a real funny conversation we had in class around that. But that's the thing that we're talking about, modeling behavior. And it's something we're researching on the back end of this research of our curriculum, is that there's generational trauma that's sort of becoming pushed down based on our digital habits. So if the mother is using the phone and lost in it and just answering, you know, subconsciously whatever to the real life version of her daughter in the space, what is her daughter going to do with her phone one day and just be immersed? So it becomes this habit thing that shows up in the next generation of users in the same family. And so I think that's a cautionary tale for us in our research, but also in how we streamline the curriculum is we're all individuals. We all have an individual responsibility to our habits, no matter what we see in the room. And that's also really challenging because I'm only with them for an hour a week or so, with their parents, with the other adults in the room for many, many, many more hours than that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. So I want to kind of talk about, like, you grew up, you had a difficult childhood growing up in the South. I kind of want to talk about that. And
Yeah, of
you had
course.
inspiring teacher, and
I
I'd like
did.
to know about all of
So
that.
yeah, that's a good. I think you picked that up. I wouldn't say I think difficult was a tough word. I think you're right. It was difficult in terms of what I understood at the time. And you're 8, 9, growing up, single mom and all that layers. A grandmother raised me and raised my mom too because she was young when she had me. So there was a lot of that kind of social difficulty. Being in the South as a little black boy running around, I was always reminded of my color first before I was reminded of my character that I was bringing to the room. And I remember I was going to church because I was that kid, and I remember going through. Coming into church one day, and one of the ushers looked at me, an older white man. He said, "Oh, you're one of the good ones." And I was 9. I thought, "Wow." And then at 9, I was like, "Oh, I'm one of the good ones."
Cool.
I was so proud of that statement. And many years later, and lots of therapy, I realized that was the turning point of my consciousness of like, oh no, I wasn't. That wasn't what he meant when he said one of the good ones. And so I had to come to terms with that. But when I was in 8th grade, well, actually really 5th grade, I was in this math class, and I was assigned with 4 other people to be the advanced math kids. And I remember feeling good about that because I was like, "Ooh, we had a separate lesson in the back, and there was the general population of kids, and there was 4 of us learning fractions or whatever we were learning in the back." And I felt good about that. And I went home to talk to my parents about my homework, about helping me with my homework, and they couldn't help me because they didn't have that awareness. And I felt so bad. I was even leaving my parents behind intellectually that I came back to class, and within probably 4 or 5 classes later, I failed out intentionally of that advanced math. So
Wow.
I dimmed myself because I didn't want to leave my mom and dad behind. And strangely enough, I went back to my parents after failing out of that sort of advanced math and back into the general population of kids. My parents could help me with my homework. It was this. I was like,
Mm,
that was it. I needed now they can help me with this because there was some advanced stuff that was happening that my parents were. I felt like I was leaving them. Fast forward 3 years later, I was in another math class, strangely enough, and Merek, never forget this moment. She looked at me and she says, "I see you dimming yourself, and I'm not going to have it." She looked
ooh.
at me like she was clairvoyant on top of clairvoyant, and I was 13, so I had been playing this game for a good 3 years. I was so happy with my little dimming because I could dim myself enough to not get all the answers, even if I knew the answer, but I wasn't going to raise my hand. But I wasn't gonna fail a test. So I would do enough just to be cool, but also not enough to be the smart guy who was always getting hundreds and A's. So I became, uh, I drew myself to that conclusion that I needed to be the good one. I needed to be the one who was the quietest, but not this interesting balance. And she looked at me, she says, "I see what you're doing, and you're not doing it." And for some reason, that conversation stuck with me. And I did not get I actually passed her class and went on to do that same thing, which was raise my light after that class. So fast forward 100 years later, I'm starting this company at 41, and I thought, what was I had this premonition or this reality of that moment happening when I was coming up with a domain name or name for the company. I didn't know, cybersecurity is a really interesting, scary space. I want to make it something that's friendly. So as you go online, and I thought about, oh, what did Mrs. Merck do that day? So I took the letters Merck and made them Merek. I switched the letters around, made it Merek, and made it something that was unique and easily domainable. And I wrote that story down, and I made a video of that story, and I went online to Hughes Middle School website and found her still teaching math class 50 years later, as you can imagine. Um, and that was her last year teaching. So I sent her a video saying that same story. And I says, "You may not remember me or who I am, but I remember you." And that was the story of Merek Security Solutions becoming a company based on the premise of that story of a teacher really just guiding me and not letting me dim myself in front of her.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that story.
So I still suck at math, but I can at least pass a test. So, but no, I just happened to catch her on her last year teaching, and that was her 50th year teaching. And I think that was the kindling that I needed just to never forget where I've come from, but also realize that I too needed some guidance from my 13-year-old self. That wasn't me just like leading the front at 41 and saying, I know everything. I'm going to create a company. No, I needed guidance from my younger self to say, oh, well, who are you now? Are you sure you're going to create a
Yeah.
company? Well, let's talk about that. And that was what happened in that moment. And it took a while for that to all really transpire to like that story to kind of get the name and all the things. But that's what happened. And we've been in business now 7 years, and we're continually evolving and continually asking the question, who are we in the tech? And now we created this curriculum to ask a very similar question with these kids who are using technology for the first time.
Did you struggle with imposter syndrome when you were starting that
Oh my
company?
God, you have no idea. I was in the Navy for 22 years. Let's get that out the way. And that was a really interesting binary kind of black and white space. And I was so comfortable with that space. But the moment I jumped off of that cliff into corporate IT and corporate world, I worked at Boeing in corporate cybersecurity. I worked at Los Alamos National Laboratory in research spaces. And yes, it was as soon as I showed up to any of those spots, I was like, oh no, I gotta do extra. I got to do 2 times more. I got
Mm,
to do 7 times more because I don't feel my body here. I feel out of body and not in a good way. And it never went away. I kind of felt that to the very last day. One of my moments in life, one of my defining moments in that space was when I retired, when I resigned from that laboratory job and started this company. And I tell you, when I started this company, I didn't have a desk. I didn't have a stapler. I had a box of things from my laboratory job on my desk at home. And I, for the first time, felt me. I felt me with no imposter syndrome. I felt me as the thing that's still curious. I felt me that's still that kid that still plays in the sandbox. And so I felt that for the longest time, 20 something years of that. The Navy puts it's not imposter syndrome because you're really defined by rank and structure, but it was there. Even though, you may be in your body around your position, you're still not psychologically safe. You don't feel safe. And so I didn't feel safe in those moments in corporate. But the moment I sat down in a very empty office with nothing in it, not even a name for the company, that's when I finally felt safe to do this work and finally felt safe to be in the body and the lifestyle and the purpose-driven alignment that I'm designed to be. And this is again continually evolving. But yes, that was a lot of that was happening in the beginning. So
yeah.
people argue that doesn't even exist imposter syndrome. And I kind of on both sides of that coin. But I felt it for the longest time. I felt like I wasn't in my true alignment. And maybe that's a form of that, but I did not feel um, authentic in that space. But in this moment, for the past 7 years, professionally speaking, this has been the most authentic I've ever been.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. When I was little, my dad made like one little comment about I decided I was going to college really young, and he was like, "We're not college people, we're ground pounders." And so,
See?
being as young as I was like, "Oh, well, actually, I immediately was like, well, maybe you are, but I'm not." But when I went to college, um, I totally felt like they're going to find out that I don't belong here. Like, and
Exactly.
then when I went into my corporate job, it was like, I'm women typically won't apply for a job if they're missing one or more of the requirements.
Ah,
Um,
gotcha. Yeah.
but I'm not that person. I
You're
will
like, screw
apply.
it.
I'm like, I'll figure it out. And so I got into one of my jobs, and they had like, there was this advanced Excel formulas functionality that I didn't know. And I was waking up like at 3
Yeah.
a.m., going
Of
to the
course.
gym, taking classes on my phone, trying to learn how to do the thing.
Right.
Because I was like, oh God, they're going to find out that I lied and I don't belong here.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then I got really solid in my identity, my corporate identity. But
Yeah,
then shifting into entrepreneurship,
that's true.
I was like back to zero. Like I
Yeah.
felt like everything I had achieved, it was like the college didn't matter, the corporate job never mattered. Nothing
Right.
that I had done was anything. I was at zero, and I felt like a child, and that I was being childish for wanting to start a
Mm.
business. Isn't that interesting?
Interesting. Yeah. I actually had a friend of mine talk to me about this strange conversation around business and entrepreneurship. I asked him, what were your goals in the beginning to, he owns a gym, and what was your goals in the beginning to own a gym? Because he didn't have a personality um, um, of that kind of fire that you used to see entrepreneurs have. And he's so very calm and very, and he said that, I didn't think I was going to make money. I just kind of did it for, I wanted to just have my own hours. And it was this really obscure answer around, I didn't want to make money. I didn't want to just have my own thing. But then someone was like, "Hey, have you done your taxes yet? Or have you done the back end stuff? Have you put a waiver out there for your clients?" He didn't do all that like sort of administrative work because that wasn't part of his psyche of what business men do in this case.
Yeah.
So it's amazing how far we come along with this sort of fake it till you make it. Even if you own the business, like you're owning the thing, your name's on the business loan or whatever the business plan, but you still are like, in this case, he was still like, well, I'm kind of the trainer. I'm like, no, you're the owner. You're actually it's a real conversation. Like, no, you're actually the leader of the gym. Like you own the well, yeah, but he was like sort of stuck in the trainer. I think there was a little bit of identity crisis when we start to like define who I am in a thing. And that comes at a cost of this level of work that you mentioned earlier. Like, am I qualified or am I, I love one of the biggest compliments I've received since I started this company and doing this work with kids is someone will say to me, "Hey, Mike, I can't tell if you're working or if you're playing." And I'll say, "Wow, thank you." That's a
Yeah.
beautiful space for me to be in that play workspace, but also I'm really just playing, to be honest, just full disclosure. But in this conversation with my friend who knows me very well, he's like, I can't determine if you're just, are you making money? Are you living? Are you playing? I can't, and it was a beautiful, beautiful, probably the best compliment I've ever received professionally. Because
Yeah.
in that
To
moment,
actually
yeah,
embrace that.
in that moment, I felt like I was finally free of that kind of that container that we put ourselves in to be quote unquote successful or deemed successful by society or whatever LinkedIn tells me I'm doing that day. And I think that's kind of the kind of responsibility of an entrepreneur is to create a better world that you found it in many ways. That's kind of all of our responsibility, even as humans. But um, in the case of what we're doing with cybersecurity has always been a white coat syndrome kind of job. You're always
Yes.
asking people, why'd you click on that link? Why'd you do that? And it's going to cost you your job. And it just made everyone so afraid. I mean, I work with companies where they have such an aggressive phishing campaign in their email that no one responds to emails. No
Wow.
one's responding. Even this is part of our assessment. I'm not even gonna name names, but even the assessment that I performed with them, the CEO even agreed that he doesn't answer the emails as well because it's just such an aggressive phishing campaign. And there's a three strikes you're out type of deal. If you get three phishing campaigns wrong, or if you click on three different links wrong, you're out of there. And so there's a real
Mm.
anxiety that shows up, and we get lost in that fight or flight mode. And so, yeah, it's challenging. So it's challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the idea of like the feeling childish felt like a
Yes.
bad thing to me because I didn't feel safe because I didn't
Yes.
have the box. I was so used to putting myself in the box.
Oh my
And now
gosh.
I'm in this creative energy of
I know.
having my own thing and I get to make all the rules and I get to decide on all the hours. And I was really good about the administrative stuff, like did that before I even started trying to make sales. And the
Right,
funny
right,
thing
right.
is, you don't have a business if you don't have sales. So,
100%. I know everyone says that, and that's a part of that's true. I mean, there's some esoteric version of what that could be like in terms of what business is defined as. But no, I think that is the pressure we all go through as entrepreneurs. Um, I think I probably should do this in my own business. I should probably take $1 and just frame it and just be like, okay, if I made $1 today, I'm good. Or if I made some version of $1 today, I don't need to like physically feel some money popping into my checking account. I want to feel connected to the thing to the work. And if that comes into virtual space or some emotional dollar or some physical dollar, all of that's welcome there. And I think that's okay to say that and be okay with that. But we get caught up in the material for that reason why it's my friend, how come we don't think about making money in your job? And so there's a real divide and conquer effect there when it comes to business management. Um,
Yeah. I
yeah,
think that, often when we decided to start our own thing, the shift is so intense. You have to,
right,
like, it requires a lot of courage to just leap like that. And
right,
it just changes your brain chemistry. Like, you've already decided, I've been chasing the dollars forever.
right.
Clearly, I'm not willing to sacrifice my time and my priorities and the way I'm spending my minutes
That's
to
it.
chase this dollar. I'm willing to do something that's a little less safe and, well, maybe a lot less safe,
Yeah. Well, that's what we're
depending.
talking about. I mean, I
Yeah.
think the thing that most of us are chasing online are likes and follows and these emotional currency space. We need validation. We're chasing that. Follow that one. If I get 2 likes, I hate myself. But if I get 2,000, I'm a YouTuber now. I feel good. And so I think that's the currency that we're kind of stuck in now, unfortunately. Um, I don't know if there's a quick fix around that because it's so ingrained in our society. Um, but ultimately our answer to that is to just take a breath before you decide something online is more important than you are. Take a peek into that machine to know that that thing that you're asking to validate you also as a company that has employees and has processes in place to bring you closer to a product space, which you become the product in that conversation. And so it's not really rocket science as it is more or less just taking time, getting past the kind of time and effort. So the currency we're chasing isn't necessarily dollars as it is more emotional currency, um, in the sort of emotional software space that we're further and further and further in nowadays more than ever. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. One of the practices we go through, in mindfulness is or like manifestation, what
right,
is the feeling that I'm after by wanting this thing that is outside of me? Like,
yeah,
it's not that thing that I want. It's an
right,
experience, it's an
right,
emotion, a
right,
feeling. And I think when we approach life in a way that we maybe don't sit at the computer for 12 hours a day grinding and trying
right.
to, like, when we can create enough space in our body, like, go outside, get
I
into
know,
nature,
right,
approach life as though it's a playground, because it is.
I
All of
know.
this
Is
stuff
it?
that we're doing it's really, it's a form of play, but we take it so seriously and we get into fear and scarcity,
I know,
and that's
absolutely.
not a place to create from. We're
No,
not having it's interesting how much success you can create from fear and scarcity, and then
yeah,
it caps, and then you have to learn a new way.
right, right. Well, also how many of us ever wanted something so badly and then we finally get it and we're like, oh, I'm not really satisfied, actually. I'm not really. I kind of wanted that from over there, but when I reached over and grabbed it and I got there, I'm not really. So I think part of the question is really when was the last time you were satisfied fully in whatever that thing is? Most of us, unfortunately, as you know, we're eating breakfast thinking about dinner. We're never present in the moment. We're never like in the thing that we're enjoying. We're just chasing the next thing because we've been divided and technology to do that thing, to constantly chase the next thing. Because at the moment you spend too long in a video, another video pops up, and then another video pops up. And so the kind of satisfaction space is up for grabs, because we're never fully satisfied anymore. We're constantly eating and chasing and consuming. And I think that's the downside of our society in many ways, that we don't, as you mentioned earlier, we're not in the experience space anymore. We've transitioned to the consuming space. We're consuming music. We're consuming videos. We're not experiencing videos. We're not experiencing music. We're consuming it, and that doesn't come. And that comes with a cost. I mean, how many times have you watched someone eat something? They're not even eating. They're just throwing it in their stomach, and they're just
Yeah.
force feeding it down. They're not even chewing the food enough to really enjoy the meal. And so our digital habits and our digital consumption space are happening in that same way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of the way that we get really unhealthy and out of balance, is by not, like, you can eat and eat and eat chips and never
Right.
feel satisfied, especially if you're doing something else while you're doing it.
That's it.
There's no nutritional density. And
No.
a lot of what we're consuming online has no nutritional density for our
Right.
mind, our heart, or for any
Right.
part of us. And so it's just like, plus with the ads in the middle of it that you keep talking about being seduced by a company, like,
Right.
the way they do it is to tell you that you're not good enough and you
That's
need
it.
this thing.
Yes,
And so
absolutely.
that's what you're filling yourself with, and you're just
Yeah.
going to get less and less healthy.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't want to be, that guy like doom and gloom and everything's just falling apart at the seams. I just think there's benefits of technology too. I mean, you and I would never connect it had it not been for the internet and the kind of connective tissue around that. And so there's nice ways to connect with people's research and resources and like really healthy boundaries that can really facilitate a more substantial relationship with technology. And yeah, I think if I were lonely or living in a sort of, antisocial kind of mindset, didn't want to go out and party all the time, yeah, but I just have a little online buddy to chat with, and maybe that person lives in another country. I could ask different questions. Maybe they speak a different language. Maybe that may inspire me to learn the language. So I think there's value in every part of this conversation. Technology is both good and bad in that regard. The only thing that's challenging is our response to the technology that we're using. That's the part that we're trying to unpack and unfold and really develop a better relationship around our response rate and our response and our actions that give us a feeling I need to be validated or I need to be um, listened to or I need to have an audience of 5,000 followers or else, and people are really doing dangerous things to themselves based on these
Mm.
posts and cyberbullying is a part of that nowadays. Cyberbullying is becoming notoriously increasingly, I mean, it's really bad because there's just like there's this multiplicity effect of it. It happened and now it's over here and now it's over here. That post doesn't go away. It just goes to different parts of the internet and now it's over here. Now 30 years later, when you're running for city councilor, for whatever reason, someone pulls up some post from 30 years ago that says, "Hey, remember when you were drinking vodka at this party in high school?" Whatever that looks like. And there's
Yeah.
documentation that shows that you were there. And so there was this other anxiety around, like, so there's that level of like, you know, things that become stationed online that causes us to make good or bad decisions. So
Yeah, yeah. It's
yeah,
it's really about embracing real life plus technology. Like,
that's it.
technology is an
Co-creative.
addition to our life, and
Absolutely.
and we can use it to create really cool things and share
Yeah,
them way further than we could before.
that's
And
it.
that's awesome. But did creating the thing give you the satisfaction, or is it the response to it? Because,
Good question. Yeah.
you know,
Uh, well, part of our questioning is really found around creativity or finding like what are you discovering about yourself in this relationship with technology? If you're using Instagram for 8 hours a day, what are you discovering in yourself that you could use as a takeaway that other than just I scroll for 8 hours? Like what is the thing that shows up that's giving you clarity around something? What insight, if any, shows up there? Like I think it's kind of what we kind of get in our little bubble, in our little silo, and we forget that the world around us would also be interested, maybe wanting to know what you're experiencing. And maybe kids in the room, we could share that with your kids instead of just like disappearing. Maybe share that space with them and allow entry points along the way, even if it's a long doom scroll. Maybe I mean I think that's kind of where meme wars have become a talking point, just sharing memes with friends. But maybe get out of that space for a little bit of time and talk about what you experience. And it just makes it less of a silo, makes less of a space where you get to hide, which is often what happens. And so I think that there needs to be sort of a hybrid approach because technology, as you know, it's not going anywhere in terms of how we use it and the innovative side of things are showing up, particularly with AI and all the aspects there. So we have to figure out our hygiene sooner or later, or else there might be some Terminator effect that may come
Yeah.
over our consciousness in some way. And I'm joking, but ultimately, I think there's going to be some serious calculus around how far do we innovate technology, because we did not create AI, we discovered it. That's a very strong distinction, because we did not create same way. We didn't create electricity, we discovered it. It was always existed. And so it's our stewardship that really determines how far we move in society moving forward. It's our stewardship of electricity that we can make it useful in our society versus using it for bad and nefarious reasons that would determine how we survive in this sort of next decade or two using technology in this way. So
Yeah. I had a fun interaction with somebody recently where we just were talking about what's on our different feeds, because obviously
yeah,
the algorithms
oh,
are
no, no,
meant to feed us what we want and what
absolutely
we look at the most,
right.
instead of a diverse, well balanced point of view. That
Yeah,
is,
exactly.
and
Exactly.
that creates a lot of polarity with people and arguments.
Yep, I think I lost you.
Everything is about consciousness. And so, like, my feed is very serious. I mean, it can be a little bit silly, but it's very like
Right,
constant education. I'm like, oh my gosh, I am overfeeding my brain. Like,
that's
I'm
it.
trying to tell myself I don't know enough all the
Right,
time.
right,
Right.
right. No, I think, and that's on purpose. I mean, we all fall victim to that. Even people who know better fall victim to that level of trying to have the most perfect feed, or to have the most um, conscious sort of, I have only the positive things on my feed, or I only have the healing or the holistic. And I think there's value in being able to curate that too. I think there's parts of me that I do feel good about, that I can look at my wall, so to speak, on Instagram, for example, and see people who are doing creative things that I actually have used in my own life, and maybe used in classroom settings, or I have a lot of educator type podcasts type that post on Instagram. I listen to those guys. So there's some version of that is true, that we do get to kind of call our own shots instead of just being subjected to whatever the algorithm gives me. If I know somebody who's doing some good work, I will definitely follow you and support you and all those things. But it has to start with a human for me and end with a human for me. That's my only kind of math in this space. It needs to start with a human. Whether I wake up with next to a human, that's great. Or at the end of the day, I'm ending my day with a human. I don't want to end it or start with it with technology. The only
Mm,
technology I have in my days in between kind of like these moments is technology field, of course, but also just within the day, I can curate that very much the same way I curate my wall within Instagram in that space. So there's a balance, but it's hard. It's not easy.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
so
it's so important that you're, creating this curriculum for these young kids who
thank
aren't
you.
getting the guidance. I mean, even adults don't have the guidance. So
Right,
and we all know that we've got issues around this, and that,
right,
I think there's like increased suicide rates among young girls with
right,
social media use.
right.
And having just being very intentional and mindful about all the things we're doing, including technology,
Right.
is so important. And I love that you're asking kids these questions about
Thank you.
what are you sensation, like talking about the spidey sense. Like,
Right.
nobody talks about that. We're supposed to act like that doesn't exist. That's
I know.
illogical. And
I know. Each time I ask that question around, because I'll obviously will ask the question, what are our senses? And they'll give out the five, and we'll go through all those sense exercises, and then I'll ask, what other senses are there? And they'll just look at me like I'm speaking French, and I'll say, what about the spidey sense? And like, oh yeah, and what is that called? We'll go down that road of intuition. So it is a fun road that we get to kind of curate with them as within this program, but also they're just not used to being asked these kind of questions around their, like, we teach them that we as humans are social media. When we interact with one another, when we interact with one another and share information, I decipher what you say, I determine if it's truthful or not. I have a feedback loop that we, you and I think that's also important to reiterate the kids that just because we don't have a USB port in my neck yet. Yet.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we're not already devices that interact in the same way. And so, so it's a real interesting language space, but it's also it I think we deserve as humans to ask ourselves more defining questions of who we are and why. Simon Sinek, start with why. Like, let's continue the why game. Like, let's continue that space of why am I enjoying this so much? What is really happening with me? Why am I spending 4 hours in the morning before I have my coffee on Instagram? Why? And it's not even about a negative or a positive thing. It's just defining who you are in the moment. Am I closer to who I really am, or am I kind of slowly becoming further away from who I really am? And that is a little esoteric, a little abstract, but it really opens up a different vessel for choice, better choices.
Yeah, I think the journey of life is self-discovery. It's
That's
not
it.
for other people to tell us what we are and what to do. And often as
I know.
parents, our kids think we're gods and that we know everything. And so it's really easy to very quickly spit out answers when they ask a question,
I
or
know.
but like, what if we were to just answer their question with a question, and like, well,
I
what do
know.
you think, how do you
Right.
feel,
Right.
instead of trying to have all the answers all the time. Like, that's not really the job.
I do remember the moment I realized my parents weren't gods. And I think that's a reality for a lot of us when we grow up. And your mom walks on water, your dad does all these, and you just like, oh my God, And then there's a moment that you come into consciousness of everything all at once happening. At the same time, you realize your parents aren't gods. You also realize you're on a planet that's seemingly floating in midair in space. And there's other planets, and there's all these other things that are happening, and there's all these lines in the sky that people are calling chemtrails. What are those? Like, you start to come into this huge awakening. And sometimes that happens a little earlier than puberty, but sometimes it happens right in the middle of puberty. So not only are you navigating your parents are not gods and how are we paying bills on this rock, then you're coming into your body that's stinky and weird and shifting. And then you question every bit of it at 40. And you say, wow, how did I who am I? So I think there's a real like Tom and Jerry thing that happens there when it comes down to chasing the thing that my parents said and chasing the thing that my priest said and chasing the thing that my teacher said. And as I said earlier, I was at 41 still asking that question around what did my teacher say, when I was 13. So there's a real honest space there too to let everything impact you. But to come into your own consciousness and be okay with that feeling, that takes courage, you know, because you can be
Yeah,
the only
it's
one thinking that. Like, there's some kid out there that's in this day and age right now who's coming into a consciousness of their own journey, and they're the only person or the only human thinking that critically about a thing. And it just may start with, why are we doing it that way? Why are we doing this thing that way? And that kid may be the first kid that's like that asked that question around a thing that we've been doing for centuries in our society. And so
that's how creation happens,
that's
right?
exactly what it is. Because I think again, I remember at 10 asking my parents to help me with my homework, and it was literally that question about the train going one direction 80 miles per hour, and the other train going the other direction at 50 miles an hour, and when that intersectionality where they meet and all that. And my parents were like, what? French, French, Japanese in one sentence. I just lost them. And I realized, oh, you had me. This was me at 10. Oh, you had me to be smarter a little bit than you. Like,
Mm.
you created me to be a little smarter so I could understand this question. And it hit me, and I retreated back to like, oh no, that's scary.
Yeah, yeah. We've been wanting to fit in. We think that pleasing our parents is going to keep us alive and safe,
Right.
and so we do everything we can to fit in, and sometimes we have parents who want us to shrink. They're like, yeah,
Oh,
stay over here, stay safe. Like,
right.
one of the very common things for women is for the like with patriarchy
Mhm.
and males being superior, or the male or the masculine way being
Right.
superior, like, which is
Right.
the doing and the
Yep.
pushing and the goal oriented, and
Right.
the way that the feminine does goals is not as accepted, right? So, and one of the ways that is the most damaging is these mothers wanting to train their daughters to follow that path because that's how I keep my daughter safe. And so, they're doing it to themselves more than patriarchy or masculinity doing it to them.
No, it's valid. That's a valid space, and I'm not a therapist. I don't even want to claim around where that impacts me or impacts the world, because ultimately we all have a responsibility. And there was a point in time, you raised a point earlier. There was a point in time where we did raise each other's kids. There was a village raising the kid kind of mindset. I was one of those kids. I know for a fact. If I got into trouble with my friend's parents' house, this was back in the 70s, 80s, there was a whooping over there. And by that mom, and I came home, because obviously there was a discussion from that mom to my mom, and I got a whooping when I got home because I was supposed to behave. And it was a real village, and it wasn't fake. It wasn't made up. It wasn't like, and then so over time, we lost that. We lost that sense of community. And then we would go online to seek it. And then that online community becomes the new village that raises me and raises that kid. So it's challenging in many ways. And I think part of the framework and identity and identifying who we are in this is not just, and I talk about asking better questions, but not just asking better questions, but really, really ready to hear the answer. And I think that's challenging, and especially when it comes to, I've asked for a thing, I've asked for clarity, but when the clarity shows up, I don't believe it. Or when the clarity shows up, I don't trust it. So I think that's so it's a two-way street. It's not just asking questions, which is important to do, of course, but you have to believe the answer when it shows up. You have to have no quote unquote opinion about it, no judgment about the answer when it shows up, and that's where our intuition starts to really develop.
Yeah. I can be really, a consumer of different information and in many ways I'm trying to regulate my nervous system because I'm dealing with CPTSD and so I'm learning how to train my brain to think in a different way. But there comes a point where it's like, okay, no more input. Like I have to make space for the divine to input.
Right. Exactly. Right. That's really what it comes down to. Like, how do we do that adequately without shame or without fear or without the anxiety that says, no, you need to retreat. You're not safe. Fear is a good teacher. Pain's an even better teacher. But ultimately, we have to listen to both in a really holistic way. And when we go and use devices, or for online, or for even use our own heart space. If I were to ask you, hey, Rihanna, how are you today? Versus saying, how's your heart today? You may have a different response to that second question than you would normally get. What I'm really asking you is, how are you really doing today? But I want to sound a little bit more less threatening and ask how your heart is. So in your mind, you may check in with your physical heart. In your mind, you may hear the word heart. Or in mind, you may smell a memory that reminds you of that heart space. Or you may be honest and tell me how your day really is doing, how your day really is going. And so, but the how are you question maybe just be fine, I'm good. How are you? So there's like there is a cadence here. And we're stumbling in it in this curriculum, and we're stumbling in it in our life as we evolve. And we're chasing, again, the Tom and Jerry scene is happening all the time, in my head at least. And so I'm slowing down enough to really realize who I am in that chase scene. And sometimes when you're in the chase scene, which is kind of ironic, but when you're in the chase scene, sometimes you realize that you're the only one in the race.
That's so true.
And you're like, hold on, I've been running for years and I'm the only one racing. Like, no one's even thinking about me. No one's even contemplating what I'm doing. They're just like, there's Mike racing again. He'll come back eventually. But, and that's the mind, mind playing tricks on us, and sort of the kind of sanity we have to navigate through, or insanity we have to navigate through as we further and further define who we are in this world. Technology included. So, yeah.
So many times we ask the question, how are you? And we're like, oh, I'm supposed to give a quick, polite response because you don't really want to know. We're just doing
Right,
the small talk thing, and there's no time for us to get into it. And that's the
right,
one thing
right.
that we don't do is we don't take the time to actually spend some time really talking with people in our lives. And
That's it. Yeah.
we got to get back to the next task.
I know. Well, we always want, we always want to be engaged. I think the engagement factor of 10 all the time, always engaged, always engaged. We don't want to go to the gym and just be in the gym. We want to listen to a podcast, listen to some music, or we always want to be on some, again, the calendar thing. I always want to be, my calendar needs to be packed in. I need to see all the colors, highlight my busy schedule. Um, we've lost our sense of being full versus being busy. I think when I have a
Mm,
full plate, I have exactly what I need. I have enough chicken, I have enough green beans, I have enough macaroni and cheese, whatever that looks like. But when we're busy, we put it all on the plate. It's like a buffet. And we want to seem like we have enough food, but we're not enjoying the food. We're not enjoying the process of digesting it because our body's just in shock every time you shovel food down your throat. And so you're just pushing. So I think that distinction between busy and being full is challenging as well for us to like really fall into because we want to feel important. We want the
yeah.
2,000 likes. We want everyone to be like, oh yeah, I posted that. No one says I post something online. I don't want any likes. I think people who say they don't want likes, and I think that's part of the journey in this space. Do I really want the likes for me or the algorithm or who wants the likes? You know? So, but something in there wants one like because we want
Mm,
to build community there too, you know?
yes.
And so it is a challenge in many ways. And I think that's the hardship I navigate through with this curriculum because I want kids to use technology. I want kids to be on social media. I want kids to be able to understand the difference between who they are and how they shift personalities online and be able to call that personality out, like call it out. But at the same time, I also want kids to be able to play in the mud and go out in nature and just
Yeah.
like take their shoes off and and just be have fun outside and be like go start wars on the playground. Go
Yeah.
negotiate treaties on the sandbox. Go and like decide who you're gonna hang out with. To go find a best friend and like hug them and they're your best friend for your life. That's all you needed. Be that kid. So there's a version of me that loves that both aspects of digital framework versus nature. I think
Yeah.
there's a healthy balance.
Yeah. And having, making the conscious choice to today, I went for a walk and I had to consciously be like, I'm going to leave the phone here. I'm not going to have headphones in and I'm not going to have
Exactly.
any input. I'm
Right,
just going to be with
exactly.
me, myself.
How'd
Like
that work out for you? Did you do that?
I did. Yeah. And,
Good. That's good.
it's a practice for me. So I'm decent with it. It's
Yeah.
funny how I have to remember to do it. Sometimes I
Well,
forget.
yeah. Well, the phone actually is in the kind of lack of or use of or whatever disclaimer we say nowadays around using our devices. It's not the new smoking habit that I've quit. Or it's now the new drugs habit that I quit, or it's now the new thing that I'm no longer using 8 hours a day. It's now the new disclaimer that says I'm not doing it. I'm not using that anymore. And it is synonymous with using drugs and using drinking not drinking as much anymore. I'm not using my social media as much anymore. I'm using my phone as much anymore. Um, I knew I was really dead to the water in this space when it comes to my own addiction to social media and my phone. My job was an hour drive away. I used to drive, and I love that distance. It actually helps me deregulate and sort of upcharge to work. And a lot of people hate driving, but I love that. But I remember going to work one day, and I got halfway to work, maybe 40 minutes in, and I didn't have my phone. I forgot my phone at home. And just so you know, I work in a very secure environment. No phones allowed, even in the building. Your phone has to be in your car, and even that's kind of like suspect. Um, but you know what I did? I turned around. I, I literally called, hey, I forgot, made up an excuse. I'm gonna be late to work. Went back, got my phone, drove to my work, left it in the car, as you do. Didn't touch it for the all day until I left to go home.
Yeah.
How crazy is that? I mean, that's such a
Yes.
crazy. And I'm like, oh, I needed my phone just to be in the area with me. I needed just in case. All the excuses that I had in my mind around I need the phone. If I can't use it, I can use it maybe at lunch break. I maybe something comes up, and I didn't even use it at
Yeah.
lunch break. That was so crazy. So I think that's kind of where my struggles have come from, that space to now, where I'm literally treat my phone like another human. I'm like, you're talking too much. You're out.
Yeah.
You're yelling at me.
Associating
You're
it
out.
with safety,
Right,
like,
exactly.
or like you're my source.
Right,
We can get confused
exactly.
about like the phone is my sense of safety, it's source, like we're replacing God with phone or money or whatever it
That's
is.
it. Yes, become the thing that we worship. We're
Yeah.
worshiping our devices now more than observing and acknowledging that they are in the room, but we are worshiping them in the worst way. So, but that was my journey in the beginning, before all this mindful bites, before we became a technology kind of mindfulness firm. Um, I changed my in that journey. I changed my Ph.D. program from system engineering to cyberpsychology. So that's also shifted in many different ways. I've made this journey an immersive journey for me on purpose because I do need to walk and sort of talk the talk a little bit. But it's been such a rewarding experience because I have made it immersive. It's not just a one hat that I wear one part of the day. It's every hat that I wear every day around my own habits. And so the work we're doing with the curriculum and everything around that, it comes from comes from a real space of me in my own struggle. So and again, the divine sourceness of where I see divinity, and it was becoming my Instagram account, or it was becoming my inbox. Um, so that was my discovery in this journey.
I love this. So
Yeah.
how do people find you, work with you?
Yeah, no worries. I because of what I just explained, I'm only on really LinkedIn, to be honest. That seems to be the most secure space for my work to be publicized, and I'm not posting pictures of my apple pie on there. But LinkedIn, find it me, Michael Davis, Merek Security Solutions, Merek Security Solutions. I'm all over LinkedIn in that regard. And of course, Mindful Bites, BYTES.io is the curriculum. If you're a school that wants to work with us to help your kids develop a sense of themselves around technology and their psychology around technology. Earlier on, we start with where this is a K through 5 curriculum. So we're starting at 6 to 10 year old, from 6 to 10 year olds. Mindfulbites.io is the site to go find us. But yeah, reach out to me anytime. Merek.io is the website, the actual business side of my life. But ultimately, we're going to shift our consciousness as well. And most likely this time next year, we'll be fully invested in this curriculum as a firm without being a pilot in sort of that space. But no, all those places will find me.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here and for what you've created.
Oh my God, this has been wonderful. I really appreciate the platform you're on. I love your work, and I'm excited to see the final product of this cast. And yeah, reach out to me anytime you need me. Your family at this point in time, you're stuck with me. So,
Absolutely.
so this
Thank you
has been
so
great.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah.